Piers, if Israel is trying to commit genocide, they're really honestly bad at it, because they could have done genocide on October the 8th. We know they have the military capacity, but they haven't. They have tried to spare civilian life, tried to contain the collateral damage.
Hey guys, this is Sahar TV, and in today's video we'll see Mike Huckabee, the ambassador of the United States in Israel, talking to Piers Morgan about the death toll in Gaza, about the situation. Let's see what he had to say. Let's go.
Well, I completely agree about that. So I think on that, I think it's important that people understand watching this that we do agree about a lot of the fundamental principles here. Hamas are the absolute bad guys in this war. They started this, and they should absolutely have no place in governing Gaza afterwards. But that doesn't mean that Israel can't also be held to, in my opinion, a higher standard than a terrorist organization. And Israel should expect, as the only democracy in the Middle East, to be held to a higher standard. And that's why the way that Israel behaves in the way it prosecutes this war has come under such intense scrutiny.
The problem is that Israel is held to a much higher standard than any other democracy in the world. Nobody has to meet these standards worldwide, only Israel. Why is that, Piers?
And I would just ask you, as the ambassador there for the United States, that it must concern you when you see Germany heavily critical now of what Israel is doing, the United Kingdom, Italy, today calling the plans for the occupation of Gaza City a potential disaster, France, most other Middle Eastern countries, you'd expect them to, but so many of Israel's historic allies lining up now to say they have serious concerns about what is now happening in Gaza. Does that not give you pause for thought, Ambassador?
It certainly does, but perhaps in a slightly different way than you're feeling it. I wish those same countries would recognize that by them calling out Israel specifically and barely mentioning not only Hamas, but not even mentioning the hostages, if at all, maybe slightly, what they have done is empowered Hamas. And I think you probably saw the interview that Secretary Rubio did over the weekend. And one of the things he pointed out was the moment that these European countries started calling for a Palestinian state, and when they started saying Israel needs to do things differently, Hamas walked away from all of the negotiations and discussions, because in their minds, hey, they're winning. They're winning because the allies of Israel are spending more time attacking Israel and questioning the way they're doing things than they are in questioning Hamas. And I want to point out something I don't think most people have a clue about. Israel doesn't just go in and bomb the ever-loving bejesus out of Gaza. They send messages, leaflets, they give warnings to people, they tell them where they're going to hit, and they urge them, get out of this area. There's a rocket launcher there, there's a base there, there's a military structure there, and they're very specific, and they tell people to get out. Hamas takes its civilians and herds them to those very places that had been announced by the Israelis as a target. To be fair, I love my country, I serve my country, but my country, the United States, we don't tell adversaries where we're going to hit in advance of it.
Completely destroying the element of surprise to kill as many Hamas members as possible. Just realize the extent that Israel is going to protect civilians. It's ridiculous.
And Israel has done that consistently for as long as I can remember, back in the previous Gaza war in 2012, 2014. And quite frankly, nobody ever says that's kind of a spectacular thing to do. Yes, there's a lot of people that shouldn't have been killed or injured, and they are. It is a tragedy. But the tragedy started on October the 7th. And I think this is one of those areas where apparently you and I do agree. It started with the raping of women in front of their children, the beheading and burning in ovens of babies, lighting elderly people on fire as they sat in their wheelchairs as their families were forced to watch it. And all of this, we know it happened despite what some people deny. We know it happened because the Hamas terrorists, the savages, they videotaped it themselves because they were really proud of what they were doing. And they took it back and they showed it to their families and they showed it to the other people around them because they wanted them to see what they had done in the absolute heinous, unspeakable murder of innocent Jewish people who had done nothing to them, and they just woke up one Shabbat morning, and here they come, and the horror that was unleashed upon them is equivalent to 40,000 Americans being slaughtered and massacred. And I wish more Americans put in that context that over 1,200 people murdered that morning is the equivalent of 40,000 Americans. And I promise you, if someone came and killed 40,000 Americans in one day, the difficulty would be to restrain Americans from wanting to do what Israel has been accused of, but absolutely has not done, and that's genocide. I've said this many times, Piers, if Israel is trying to commit genocide, they're really, honestly bad at it, because they could have done genocide on October the 8th. We know they have the military capacity, but they haven't. They have tried to spare civilian life, tried to contain the collateral damage, but they don't get any credit for that, appreciation for that. Instead, they get condemned by the very people that ought to be their allies and that ought to understand that if the same thing happened, whether it was in France or Great Britain or Canada or the Netherlands, I assure you that the people of those nations would not say, gee, we just don't like the way that you're fighting those who did this to us.
Well, it was a part of Hamas's plan. They wanted to lure Israel into a war. They left their civilians in homes. They increased the number of civilian casualties. They stole the humanitarian aid. They took hostages. They refused releasing the hostages. They claim starvation. They claim genocide. They claim ethnic cleansing. So Israel looks like the bad guy. And then Israel is isolated by its best allies. And once Israel is isolated, it's much easier to destroy Israel. This follows the Hamas charter, destroying Israel with whatever means possible. But when will the people understand that this has nothing to do with land? When will the people understand that this is purely a religious issue? When will people understand that this stems from Islam wanting to dominate, wanting to create a world caliphate? And according to Islam, Islam should prevail over all other religions. That's according to Surah 933. Jews cannot control Muslims, yet Muslims can control and dominate Jews, just like back in Muhammad's time. So the moment you understand the root cause of this conflict, the moment you understand that this has nothing to do with the land of Israel existing or not existing, it has to do with the Jews, then you start thinking of solutions. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you'd like to support me financially, you can do that using Buy Me Coffee or Patreon down in the links in the description. Please don't forget to join our Discord in the link below, and now you can become a YouTube member and enjoy specific YouTube perks. Thank you for being here. I'll see you again in the next video. Bye-bye.